took an interest in politics pretty early in life. My sister, who'd become a mother figure for me, was 17 when I turned 5. So I remember hearing some pretty divisive talk in our house regarding the Vietnam War, the bombings in Cambodia, and Watergate. But even then, I don't remember anyone from the other party ever talking about the coming civil war, like we hear today from people standing outside in line at a political rally.
I mean, that's an actual civil war that you're talking about. Oh, yeah.
People say the country is divided now like it hasn't been since the Civil War. That's probably true. When I was a kid, there was a lot the two major parties agreed on. Nixon was quoted as saying he was, quote, now a Keynesian in economics, end quote. And let's not forget that it was also Nixon who created the Environmental Protection Agency. Yeah, Nixon, the Republican. I don't think the cause of our current division is a mystery. I think over the last decade or so, what common ground existed prior has been eroded, perhaps sabotaged, certainly tossed aside. And that's left one side bewildered, if not entirely horrified. Mostly because so many of the current disagreements seemed unimaginable, inconceivable, just a decade ago. Prior to 2015, for instance, virtually everyone in both major political parties agreed that a combat aviator shot down in battle who was then captured by the enemy and tortured relentlessly, mercilessly, and refused an out-of-sequence early release was an unassailable war hero whose bravery and devotion to our country was beyond question, and that anyone saying otherwise or referring to such a person as a loser would instantly become persona non grata. This is something about which members of the two parties now disagree. Prior to 2015, virtually everyone in both major political parties agreed that mocking someone who is disabled, both the person's voice and the physical affectations which are a part of their disability.
Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Was out of bounds and unacceptable in every way. This is something about which members of the two parties now disagree. Prior to 2015, virtually everyone in both major political parties agreed, particularly on the conservative side, that good character was an essential part of leadership. That lying, cheating, vulgarity, and a complete lack of respect for others were serious, disqualifying defects in a political candidate. This is something about which members of the two parties now disagree. Prior to 2016, virtually everyone in both political parties agreed that any man who imagined his celebrity gave him the right to grab women by their genitalia without their consent is a pig of a human being and a person guilty of sexual assault, especially when said man makes this exact confession on tape for all the world to hear. But this is something about which members of the two parties now disagree. Prior to 2018, virtually everyone in both major political parties agreed that illegally paying off a porn star with whom you'd had sex and a Playboy playmate with whom you'd had a 10-month affair in order to keep the information from the public just before an election was again disqualifying. This is something about which members of the two parties now disagree. Prior to 2021, virtually everyone in both major political parties agreed that lying about election fraud in order to stay in power after losing an election and failing to do what every president before had done, peacefully transfer power to the new administration, instead inciting a riot at our Capitol, well, we all agreed that would be unthinkable and completely beyond unacceptable. Actually, we had some kind of consensus on that for a very brief time. Leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, said that the former president was, quote, practically and morally responsible, end quote, for what happened at the Capitol, which included a few deaths, as you know. House Leader Kevin McCarthy also said, quote, the president bears responsibility, end quote, for the attack, quote, by mob rioters. But this is something about which members of the two parties now disagree. When we can no longer agree on the status of a war hero, when we can't agree about mocking the disabled, when we can't agree that character matters, when we can't agree on the serial sexual assault of women, on illegally paying off porn stars and Playboy playmates, on the peaceful transfer of power and the culpability of a president who clearly enjoyed what the mob rioters were doing on January 6th, don't be shocked by the divisions in our country. Be shocked that nearly half of us are okay with this behavior. Once again, I'm me. Thanks for watching.